of this company to improve the combination of different images from different domains. Like you can see here, you sometimes just, if you have the RGB image, it's easy, but if you have like a thermal image, it's not that easy anymore to compare them. For us, for the forensic part, it's of course, again, the most important to do the post-mortem identification. You heard about this before several times. And also, we are interested in facial reconstruction, of course. But we would like to do this not by hand. We would like to use neural networks, AI-based software, which maybe allows us to model post-mortem facial changes for the reconstruction. Here you can see our project plan. So we are responsible for taking the pictures. We invite our subjects. We use all available camera systems. And at the end, we will have images. They would be aligned, and the company would transfer afterwards these images with, again, neural networks into a template. And this template you could use to run it through, for example, an ABIS system. And hopefully you're going to generate a match afterwards, which could be used by the police, for example, or maybe from us, from the forensics. Am I still with the same? Okay. Now, again, there might be a picture you don't want to see, so you close your eyes. Okay. So this shows you lots of text and lots of pictures, but what we want to do, we want to get some images from at least 200 living subjects or persons, and also from 200 deceased persons. And we want to take pictures from all kinds of perspectives, different perspectives, and we want to use all available camera systems to make this collection a little bit bigger. Invite them several times, and so on. And for the deceased, it's also planned to reconstruct or to get 3D models of the face with a 3D handheld scanner. Emilio had just showed us a different way. He also used a handheld scanner for just the skeletonized face. So as you can see in the picture, sometimes we have the same problem, but we would try this with the fresh deceased. And of course, we would like to get some CT scans of each deceased, so that at the end it should be possible to also combine these different visual techniques to have maybe an opportunity to rebuild faces automatically. At the moment, this is the situation I would like to show you. If it comes to facial detection algorithms, they are trained and optimized on RGB images. This works fine by now, but if you have other domains, then there's a transformation required. As you can see here, if you compare those pictures, you see that, this is a pointer, yeah. Okay. This face here is not even close to the real picture, so it's still too far away to do a proper match. So this is a little bit technical. So how can we optimize this? The company Dermalog was thinking about two solutions to transfer those domains, and these solutions, of course, are again neural networks. The one is called cross-domain matching, the other one domain transfer, and basically it's about extraction. When it comes for the first one, for cross-domain matching, it's extract the main features of the face, which makes it really typical for identification, and then build or create an average template out of it. That's the one way. The other way would take each domain, convert this into an RGB image, and then again, rebuild or create through coding, or this is also a neural network, and another image what you can use to make a template again. So at the end, it's always the same. These are just two ways how to do the transformation. They want to try both opportunities, and at the end, they will choose the better one, which works a little better, and put all the implement this information into the demonstrator, and this you can use at the end to train large databases. of course, this is really important. Facial aging is always difficult, as you know. And this just shows you what Damlock did before a little bit. They created, they built up, I don't know, transformation model, and they trained a big data set with this transformation model which is already existing. And with that, they could improve the implementation of the plausible simulation of age variability through transformation was really successful so far, but it can be better. So the transformation model reduced the equal error rate in face detection by 18%, and simulation of age variability improves face detection by 10%. It's not enough, but maybe they can go a little higher. Ja, ich bin gleich fertig. Okay, so I'm almost done. This is our timetable, and as you can see, we started this project actually in June 1st, 2021, and now we are here somewhere, and because we had several issues to get rid of or to handle with, so that's why we had to extend our project until almost the end of the year, and I will show you what happened, and I think this is what happens to lots of people. We had pandemic issues to fight with and other pitfalls, so I heard about the ethical problems and the votes from ethical committees. We had the same problem. Our positive vote, we got this until the end of 2022, so we just can start with taking pictures of the disease. We just start to enlarge this data set. And we had also problems to get employees. We couldn't get them, not just our institute, but also the company Dermalog had problems with that. And usually it's no problem to find subjects at our institute. We have like a big university hospital, lots of students, but there weren't because of the lockdown, no students. All the employees were sitting at home doing home office, so this wasn't planned before, so it was kind of difficult. But we think that we can reach the goal and enlarge our data set from the of living subjects and also of the diseased subjects. And of course, the company has some plans to optimize the matching systems and to test the prototype at the end. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next presenter is Pil Mamatuba, who is a forensic artist and has worked under the South African Police Service in the forensic unit of facial identification. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll be presenting part of my research at the University of Stellenbosch, which is currently ongoing, titled Facial Imaging for Forensic Identification in a Digital Age. Just to give a little bit of a brief definition of what a facial depiction is, it is a recognized technique in forensic human identification of the living and the dead, and it is a useful tool towards promoting a lead to identification in cases of missing persons, missing persons or the unidentified dead. A little bit of background information. Excuse me. This presentation will give a brief overview of the historical context of accuracy in the forensic imaging field and discuss the current influences of digital technologies in recognition of the dead. The study blends practice-based methods and theoretical analysis over 3 phases to determine the efficiency of forensic facial depiction in complex identification cases, which are internationally, and also understanding responses to different modes of representation, such as depictions that are produced in the public, and to also understand the communication barriers between identification protocols and the sharing of information between investigation organizations and with the public. A little bit of historical context is literature done by Wilkinson in 2006, where a blind accuracy assessment of computer-modeled forensic facial reconstruction using computed motography data from live subjects was used. Using 2 subjects, white male and female, the results of the female subject showed that the facial reconstruction for the white female showed that it was 53.8% aligned, less than 2.5 millimeters. The largest areas of error were greater than 5 millimeters to the subject, where at the upper lip, the nasal alveoli, ears, and the lower cheeks. The most accurate areas in this study were of the nose, the chin, and upper cheeks, and the cranium. These kind of results in this research suggested that computerized modeling systems for facial reconstructions following an anatomical method produce a recognizable individual and good levels of reliability and accuracy. Another case study by Smith in 2018 is titled Shape Accuracy versus Recognition in Facial Depiction. 3 analyses were carried out to test the depiction against the target face. Apologies about that. Three analyses were carried out to test the depiction against the target face in this study. 1 was the surface mapping, 2, AI recognition using a software known as Face ID, 3 was the use of a human subject which was familiar to the target. The results of the case study to the analysis in surface mapping showed that there was 40% of the total number of 3D approximation were accurate, with plus or minus 5 millimeters for greater or equal to 85% of the total face surface, which is higher than the previous study in Caroline Wilkinson's. The debate within accuracy, recognition, and likeness. Quantitative methods seems to be the method that is used in creating a survey with a pool of faces in trying to answer this question, wherein volunteers are asked to match the faces. With the establishment of different theoretical approaches and the development of facial reconstruction protocols, accuracy assessments have become more quantitative and less subjective. Here is a figure. In Figure 1 and Figure 2 is an example of the system that was used called Rebov 2000, which shows the values of the subjects of both male and female. However, the results in the mentioned study by Caroline Wilkinson in 2006 may have been more successful because the surface scan models in the face pools were very familiar in appearance to the facial reconstructions, and the volunteers were forced to compare morphology when attempting to identify the target from the face pool without being distracted with facial tones or facial textures. The study suggests that people find it difficult to compare faces depicting inconsistent information, and perhaps the present study produced higher hit rates due to the simplicity of the comparison. But however, the facial reconstructions will still need to be accurate in morphology and the identification of the individual. The issue with forensic case studies on levels of accuracy, this brings me to my study, and recognition emanates that the difference of theoretical research and practice-based in uncontrolled cases that are done in laboratory try to attempt to replicate real-life settings, because laboratory based research relies on participants who are unfamiliar with target images as compared to actual forensic investigations. Part of this research seeks to use real-life solved cases, as mentioned in the opening stages of the purpose of this presentation. A case study was used to analyze, the case study that I'm currently working on, selected 13 resolved cases in published literature where forensic facial depictions were commissioned to solicit leads for identification unknown deceased persons, an unknown deceased person. The collection of these cases was collected via search of traditional and social media. From the full sample, I will only be referring to 3 case studies to illustrate key findings. In the case of Evans, whose remains were found in 1986, a Facebook post was shared on the Vallejo Sheriff's Office page with over 2 million views, consisting of 2D facial composites, which were commissioned to, you can see over there, which were commissioned to the State University of Florida. Evans was later identified by a post of a mother looking for her son, which interlinked with the sheriff's office. This led to his identification in 2020, making a time span of 6 years from the year the 2 composites was commissioned and circulated. In this case, we learned that the role of a facial reconstruction is not limited to recognition only, but also to keeping the story alive. In another case study of Autumn, who was a hit-and-run case in 2019, quite recent, this case was televised and reported among other news websites such as 11 Alive News. Autumn was later identified by an eyewitness who recognized his tattoo. So what was done here in the article was that the facial depiction didn't just go alone. They also shared it with post-mortem tattoo images. This also shows that real-life cases also prove that non-facial identifiers, such as tattoos, form part of visual identification. I think this is something that Tracy Raindrop spoke about. In the last case study that I'm going to briefly speak about, of Hamilton, whose remains were found in 1999. 4 facial depictions were created. Apologies again. 4 facial depictions were actually commissioned for this case. I've only shown 3 because of time. For all those 4 depictions that were created, the time between the commissions of the depictions is unknown to show the development in techniques. Although NICMAC did produce 2 depictions, a 3/4 facial depiction that you see in the center, and a 2.5D facial reconstruction using current 3D free-form haptic technology was reproduced between 2018 and 2019, and this was a success story. However, there is no paper trail of the public circulation or posts of social media of the post or poster history from 2018 when the success story depiction was published to the 2022 success story. In conclusion, this shows that the internet has become another platform for forensic investigation by government or private organizations to circulate facial reconstruction and post-mortem depictions. This suggests that the use of social media is a valuable tool in circulating forensic facial depictions to promote identification of unknown persons. Although this can be controversial, using social media sites proved to be a struggle for researching these case studies, as information is partial and a lot of articles get taken down, and it makes it very impossible to trace publication while a case is still open. Some online missing websites are more prone to advertising their success stories without a proper record of the process. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. The next presenter is W.D. Fush. W.D. Fush has been working for the government for the last 21 years. He started at the South African Police Service in 2002 as a constable, attending complaints and investigating crime scenes as first responder. Then in 2006, Fush took the opportunity and the risk and started working as a senior forensic officer assisting and actively participating in the death investigation process. Now he is trying to give a voice to the voiceless by improving the standards of death investigation rendered by the FPS from crime scene till releasing the body to the family for burial. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to thank the delegates and especially the ICRC. All that courses that they actually give there in Johannesburg and in South Africa, I actually attended. And it's this courses that actually ignited my passion to handle human remains with dignity and search for the identification of this human remains. So today, I'm going to speak to you about improvement of identification of human remains through innovation, digital biometrics. I want to start with two questions. What person is the most important at forensic medical legal institutions? What asset is the most important at forensic medical institutions? And then, where does innovation start? It starts with a statement. My statement is giving a voice to the voiceless. He introduced me. Is that my identity? No, that is surely not my identity. My name, my date of birth, my hair color, my address, that can change. If we look at human identity, we can really look at unique identifiers. Like, for instance, skeletal features, DNA profiling, retinal scan, facial features, and yes, fingerprints. I just want to give a statement by A.I. Franken. He said, you can't change your fingerprints, you only have 10 of them, and you leave them on everything you touch. They are definitely not a secret. Identification of human remains in South Africa. As you heard by previous speakers, that we have good legislation in South Africa that's related to identification of any person in South Africa. And what we then do is, when we identify human remains, it's done by a statement. The family come and produce a document, they view the deceased, and it's done by word of mouth. If this deceased is not identified, we then collect these fingerprints on manual way, and then send this to the local criminal record center that is run by the SAPS. If there's no hit on that system, they then send it to the HANA system that is run by the Home Affairs to check if there's no identity on their system. This process actually takes up to 4 to 6 weeks for that results to come back to us. The next thing that we do is we collect DNA from burnt, decomposed, or dismembered remains, or skeletalized remains. This process takes up to 2 years to come back. In the Western Cape, I know that if there's known deceased that are burnt or decomposed, they have other means of getting a quicker result as well. And then, yes, as you heard by previous speakers, facial reconstruction and skulls. So what's the current problem? We need to look at problems. Many unidentified human remains in our laboratories, like we see in the newspapers. These unidentified human remains get buried as unknown or unclaimed in various places in our municipalities. This can be possible migrants, not just illegal migrants, but also a legal migrant. Because if you get left next to a road with any identification and your fingerprints is sent to any place, there will be no hit on our systems, and you will also be buried as an unidentified. Also, the families of known remains wait a long time to get closure, to bury their loved ones, because it takes up to 2 years or 4 to 6 weeks. Then, another problem is false insurance claims. The syndicates use this unknown remains in our mortuaries to do false insurance claims. But now, let's look at the fourth industrial revolution. Yes, we can use fingerprint scanners, laser scanners, and verification software. This, in 2018, the CSIR, Center for Research in South Africa, came to us and asked if we cannot run a pilot project to improve the capturing of fingerprints via a laser system. This was the fingerprints that was actually produced. Quite good. Then I actually asked them, can we not compare apples with apples? These guys that sells these scanners are bragging that it's liveness detection. Can we not use a cheaper system to produce the same results? And they gladly accepted the challenge. What was our surprise? That we saw that this device of 2,500 Rand actually also captured deceased fingerprints. I just want to warn, the next picture is of sensitive value. So now this case study, in 2019, these human remains were collected at my facility. It was a left hand that was put in a box, a left ear, and then the pinky and the ring finger. This, after the postmortem, we actually collected the fingerprints of this deceased. We sent it to the local criminal records center and said, please, this is urgent, run it, because we didn't have any other human remains. The body was not there. It was just this human remains. Actually, the suspect were known to the police, and they arrested him for trying to intimidate the ladies that he left this human remains for. After a day, we received results from the local criminal records center, and there was a hit on the system. This guy was previously arrested. 2 days after that, the Forensic Pathology Service in Pretoria actually collected human remains that had these remains missing. I rushed with these remains to Forensic Pathology Pretoria, tried to reconnect these remains with the body. But the pathologist correctly said, we cannot match this with this body if it's not scientifically proven. I then collected the prints from the other body, and we actually waited 4 weeks for a result to come back. This is where then I searched the internet, looking that we cannot match directly with the system at Home Affairs. I searched on the system and found a third-party KYC that actually connects directly to Home Affairs using the KYC Act. The KYC Act is when you go to a bank, they verify you against that system. And then it says that you are who you say you are. And I used it. And this is just one of the case studies which we firstly used it on, was this lady was actually reported missing by her family members. For a month, she was missing. The police actually didn't take the statements from that family members and suspected that they actually killed her. On that same day, they arrested them, and then they were actually on the day at the bail. The police knew that they had this system. They gave him the information. I rushed to FPS Pretoria, collected the fingerprints left and right, degloved it, and within 2 minutes, we had a match. I sent that match to the investigating officer, and so she produced it in the court. The bail hearing was then denied, and the family actually withdrew their bail application, and they were actually confessed to the murder of this victim. The other case study that was also important to me was this person on the left. He was actually collected by us and was badly mutilated. The only things that was left from him was his fingerprints. On the Monday, the family went to the police and reported this person missing. Knowing that I had this system, the police asked me to check if this is not the missing person. I gladly accepted the challenge again. And within 2 minutes, I had a positive result, showing me that this fingerprints matched on the system, giving the family closure. They didn't have to see their family member so mutilated, we could do identification. This is also just other biometrics, because DNA is also on a biometric system. Tomorrow, you'll hear maybe about Linda Matate. Linda Matate was actually collected by us. We collected a sexual assault kit on her. She was actually unknown when we collected her. We didn't bury Linda for a whole year because we knew that she can be identified. We did take fingerprints, but it came back, could not be determined, unknown. A month before we started the process of burying Linda, investigating also came to us and said, but we have this a match with this sexual assault kit. Do you still have this body in your mortuary? We said yes. And actually the DNA of the deceased, the DNA of the perpetrator that was a suspect matched with the sexual assault kit. We then let the mother came to identify and match the mother DNA with her DNA, and we could release this body to the mother, giving swift justice to Linda. The other one is using low-look imaging. This person was actually committed suicide by burning himself in the car. So I just want to show other things, but 2 slides. Thank you. We can use cell phones, SIM cards, any clothing. And we can see that identification is a science on its own. This project was also enrolled into the CPSI Awards and was awarded second runner-up in South Africa. The first time that Forensic Pathology Service actually came and showed somebody that there's innovation in a Forensic Pathology Service. So I just want to leave you with a last statement. My closing statement on identification. Dream big. Stay humble. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes, because tomorrow it can be you lying next to that road without any identification. And let's do the basics right. Thank you very much.
Rudolph, VDB. Yeah, he's a specialist, forensic investigator at the Forensic Pathology Service, Department of Health, Western Cape. Yes, he has been in this business for us 18 years as a South African Police Service from February 2002 until April 2020. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, delegates, senior members, and ladies and gentlemen. I started my journey with forensic pathology about 3 years ago and was assigned to do the fingerprints of unknown bodies at the 2 biggest facilities in the province, namely Salt River and Tygerberg. The fingerprinting of deceased and fingerprint techniques used to identify unknowns at our mortuaries in the Cape Town Metro District, the ink method, powder and tape, injecting the fingerprints with a fluid or a tissue enhancer, degloving to get fingerprints on your epidermal prints, subepidermals, and dermals. Can also use microsol, macrophotography, and the removal of the fingerprint pads. I can't. All right. Identification of deceased, primary identifiers, DNA, fingerprints, and dental records. So today I'm talking about fingerprints and not the other 2. Just taking you back, when I was working at SAPS in my younger years, I attended 2 housebreaking scenes where I lifted unidentifiable fingerprints that was not identified on any system at SAPS. Carefully sitting and doing research on that, I found it to be baboon fingerprints. So I did some research on it, and after the fingerprint presentation I'm busy with, I'll just take you quickly through the presentation of my research with fingerprints of baboons. Secondary identifiers is the implants, scars, tattoos, jewelry, personal items, and clothing. First steps when we start doing fingerprints on the deceased at facilities is obviously to release the rigor mortis, clean the fingers with a sponge, pine gel, nail brush, that nice one that's in the shower that you can clean your nails with. If you don't have one at the facility, take one to the facility, just clean it and take it back home. It's just a joke. Possibilities, the hand is loosened for fingerprints. Fingerprints is crisp and clear. And then the removal of artifacts, debris that can influence the taking of fingerprints is then gone. The deceased hands that usually come to the facilities looks like that, full of sand, debris, and the fingerprint quality won't be that good. The washing procedure, just quickly release rigor mortis, use a sponge nail brush or hot water with some pine gel, wash and scrub it, and then dry it with a towel and not with linen. Linen don't absorb that much water. Clean hands will give us quality fingerprints for identification. The most common technique is the ink method. You use it on fresh bodies or where the fingerprint is still soft, and the fingerprint pads can be ink rolled. Ink roller, spatula, and the fingerprint strips. So that's the, what do you call this? Yes, and the English left me. The tools that I'm using for fingerprint, for the ink. So there's ink roller, the fingerprint spatula, the ink strip, the fingerprint strip, and then obviously the nice clean hands. Just the procedure, roll it with the ink, press firmly down on the ink, the paper strip, go to from finger 1 to 10, and you get a nice fingerprint result. And that's the results that we can scan into an AFIS system and get clarity to the family and hand over the deceased. This lady, I had to remove some photos, was in an accident with a train heater. She was badly mutilated, and we only could find one hand. So lucky for us, we could do the fingerprint with ink, and we got 5 fingers, and she was positively identified and handed to her family. Powder and tape. That is a little bit, if the fingerprints are dry and mummified. Black fingerprint powder, a brush. The brush you can use that you put some blush on the females, you can use that for fingerprints, a joke again. Fingerprint tape, and again then the fingerprint strips. The black fingerprint powder is just used for a contrast on white paper so that we can get a good reading. Just a method. So a case study, this guy was found obviously with the weather and a few weeks in the sun. Difficulties to get fingerprints, but each finger has a different technique, depends on where the hand was at the time he was found. Nice fingerprints was found, he was ID'd and positively handed over to his family. Injecting fingers. We all know granny fingers, you stay too long in the shower, in the bath. Then to take fingerprints of that finger, we will lose fingerprint ridges and data. So we will inject it just behind the first fingerprint base, and then there's the difference between the two, before and after the injecting the tissue enhancer. Degloving is a decomposed bodies. So decompose and degloves is the same story, you just clean it again. And after cleaning it, you can use the fingerprint powder and tape, or you can use the ink roller to get a clear fingerprint. Boiling water, if you do not have any dermis left on your skin and then only epidermis left, the boiling water technique will give you a nice warm and fluffy finger to use. If the finger is degloved and a little bit moist and after washed and dried, it still stays slippery, you use the scorching skin method, or then ethanol. Ethanol just takes away the moist in the skin. Epidermal and dermal prints, just to show you the difference, there is no difference. So if the epidermal is not available to you, you can still get the prints on the dermal or vice versa. Using the biometric system that Willie and some other guests spoke about is the biometric system. Obviously, if the fingerprint is mummified or very dry, that will be a difficult task. So I tried some stuff. Ethanol and distilled water, not effective. 1% potassium hydrox solution was also not effective, and warm tap water was not effective to get the fingerprint back to a soft base to get fingerprints from. But 25% amino hydroxy solution, fingerprint ridges successfully restored after 48 hours in the solution, and sodium carbonate solution with ethanol and distilled water, same result I got. With 48 hours in that solution, fingerprint results was magnificent. Mummified bodies is challenging, dried and same as mummified. So just as the solutions I used. And then yes, the solutions, the the finger pad in the solution. Do not do this in your kitchen. Your husband or wife won't be happy. Do it in a controlled environment, maybe at the office or in a lab. So the ethanol and sodium, so we got the results from that. New technique, sodium carbonate and ethanol is a very good soaking solution because it's a strong base, break apart protein bonds and enable redirection. Ethanol fixes the solution and destroys bacterial activities. Skeletized bodies, it's used to enhance the fingerprints or the finger pads for fingerprints. After I take out the fingerprints from the solution and the bottles, you can actually use it again on the biometric system and then it will give you results. Just quickly, a few photos before I go to my baboon slides. Before hydration, after hydration, and then the results. That's the same thing. Can I have the next slides, please, sir? We have only one enemy today, and it's time. So I mentioned it, try to get fingerprints of that guy. I won't try it. So, yes. Rich features and fingerprint patterns. We all know if we are working with fingerprints, there's some fingerprint characteristics, beginning endings, bifurcation, islands, short ridges, lakes, crossovers, and overlaps. That is the most common features that you'll get on your fingerprints or even on your footprints for identifications. I just used 3 basic fingerprint patterns. I'm not going to go into detail. We don't have time for that. An arch, a loop, and a whirl. That is the most common one that I found on my baboon friend's fingers and foot. Human hand and my baboon hand. You can see it's almost the same, but not 100% the same. So I marked out some points on the human palm and fingers. So the points that I marked out there, obviously the delta and the cores, and then also the beginning or ending of ridge features, the short ridges, the islands, the lakes, bifurcations on both the palm and the finger. Collected this on a crime scene. Fingerprint was identified by all that points that I just mentioned, as well as the palm print on the right-hand side. So this young lady, she let me use her foot for an example. You can identify humans by footprints that's not on any databases. So yeah, that's it. It also got bifurcations, deltas, loops, islands, lakes, and can be used for identification. So this was my first interactive case with my baboon friends. It's a small town next to the coast in the Western Cape of South Africa. And the detectives there had some housebreakings and could not solve the case. So I found this funny looking prints and I went back to the office and I asked my colonel, I just want to use some time and try to figure out this case as why there's 7 out of 20 cases cannot be identified by fingerprints. So I saw that the fingerprint ridges are much broader and further apart than human prints. So this can't be human. So I went from Cape Town to the Eastern Cape. I traveled 800 kilometers to get a nice photo of this male baboon. And I marked out significant fingerprint ridge features that can identify him to a crime scene or to his troop. Bifurcations, beginning or endings, short ridges, lakes, overlaps, whirls, loops, and deltas. everything that's in our fingerprints that can identify us as a human. I did the same with the paw prints, same as the human, can also be identified. Marked out bifurcations, beginning or endings, short ridges, and islands can be used for identification. So this small female baboon was darted, and she was put a tracker on her. So I took the opportunity to take photos of her paw prints, and also again marked out bifurcation, beginning or ending, lakes, crossover, deltas, and whirls. And I did match them, or tried to match them all to each other, and found that it's exactly the same as humans. So baboons have identifiable fingerprints and paw prints. This guy, he's between 5 and 8 weeks old. I played with him while taking the photos, and also at that young age, I marked out bifurcation, beginning endings, a lake, and even a delta. So he will be later be identified. I got him on record, so if he breaks into a house somewhere along the coast, I will identify him, and then he'll be in trouble. So my conclusion quickly, identification is at our finger, palm, and paw prints. Last thing, Henry Ford, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress, and working together is a success. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
The last presenter of the day, she's Chumisang Bedzi. She's a forensic anthropologist and humanitarian researcher, and she's passionate about AGIHE and currently researching on scarification and tribal markings in Africa. You only have 10 minutes, then we go for QA, then we conclude for the day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Can you hear? Oh, yeah.
We are going to present it here. So that you can.
So what do I do? Start the one.
For the video, you will play the video by clicking. Then after playing the video, you will press here 2 times. So you will be next time.
Can you be on standby just in case I can't do it? Okay, that's fine. No, that's all right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dimi Sang, and I'm going to talk to you about disaster victim identification and migration, the value of using scarification and tribal markings as secondary identifiers in mass fatality incidents, and determining source of origin. And also, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge my collaborator, Stephen Fonseca. So just some interesting facts. The image on the left, so that's from the Yoruba tribe. An interesting fact about the lady with the scarification on the back. So basically, it was a symbol of loyalty to her brother who had killed someone. Both of them had to go through a ritual to proudly verify this fact. So just a bit of introduction and background. So 54 countries, 2,000 languages, and almost 3,000 tribes woven into one fabric. The African continent truly attests to the genesis of identity. Scarification has prevailed in Africa. The striking visibility and irreversible effects of keloids on dark skin has influenced this choice of this body modification. So it's been performed for various reasons, such as beauty, religion, societal ranks, tribes, and clans. So achieved through intricate techniques, markings have been created through skin cutting, lacerations, and removal of parts, varying amongst groups in terms of size, type, and body positions. So, what are the aims and objectives of this research? It's still ongoing as well, by the way. So we aim to collect, categorize, and catalog cultural markings according to various regions in Africa. We aim to increase awareness of scarification as a marker of identity, and we want to adopt a cataloging system for markings similar to the unseen list ITL 12000 standard used by the law enforcement agencies to identify tattoo patterns. So, what is the role of scarification and tribal marks in Africa? So there's four main roles, basically being identity, aesthetics, spirituality, medical resolutions, and rite of passage or marking livestones. So if you see the table to my right, it's just a summary of those main roles and when they would be acquired. So with beauty marks, they're usually adopted by both males and females, but very prevalent in females, and they're acquired during teenage years. When it comes to the rite of passage, it's usually a transition from one life cycle to another, with the three main stages being childbirth, coming of age, and courting and marriage. And when it comes to spiritual protection, most markings have stories that are attributed to mystical powers. And when it comes to medical purposes, they have been used as therapeutic techniques to relieve different medical conditions. So, for an example, cultural groups in Togo have actually used scarification to treat individuals suffering from epilepsy by marking them on their forehead. So, language. Part of this research has been to also understand the language that's been used around scarification. So this is at the core of developing an efficient cataloging system. So we kind of first encounter scarification, the documentation of it from the slave trade register, so registers of liberated Africans between 1808 to 1862. And this was adopted as a method of recording scarification and analog tattooing within African context. But while it's going through those documentation, we start to notice shared vocabulary. However, I would like to think that it was very less accurate. For example, they're describing keloids, which is the raised bump, like you saw on the first image of the Dasanesh tribe, as bumps. So we are trying to bridge that gap by ensuring that we're using accurate language and uniform description derived from understanding the scarification processes and the patterns. So, methods of scarification. So again, with the Yoruba tribe, which is the lions, this is called pattern cutting. So it's the most common method of scarification and tribal marking techniques, which favor the use of small blades such as metal and glass. When we move to the next one, the Dasanesh woman, who's got the keloids, this is called the prick, lift, and cut method. It's a trifecta. So the way it's done was, so this individual was they created a prick using a needle, and then they would use a razor blade to cut and go through into the dermis and remove the muscle. And then they apply soot or charcoal, which then creates this raised bump after it's healed, known as keloids. So we are trying to establish a methodology to catalog all these scarifications. So the first one is just how you'd view it in the form of probably a website. So we want to have an African continent with the various African regions, which will list the different countries in each region and list the different cultural groups that actually bear the scarification. And then from that, you'll be able to see the images of the markings, the digital drawings, and 3D images. And then you have the descriptions of the markings and the in-depth meanings and acquisition. And then the second part of the study, we hopefully want to create a digital app so that professionals can use it in the mortuary or in the field. And what one will be able to do is scan the images of the scarification and input into the system. And that trained algorithm will scan through existing data. That system will then produce a result based on similarity, say maybe 2 to 3 images. That could be a potential match. And then the user will have access to detailed information regarding the markings, tribe name, and country of origin. So I tried to create a little video of how it would look like. Sorry, the cursor's not moving. Oh, I think they're going to play it. Okay. There you go. I apologize, there's no sound. So I just gave you an example of Benin as a country. And so as you saw, it was the African map where you clicked, it came to Benin. It gave you just a summary of how many scarification tribes are there, and then you'd get the whole detail. So this is the Holly tribe. I've got the full descriptions of how I would like it to be, so showing you combination of vertical and horizontal lines in clusters of 3, similar shapes to pentagon, and then you have the full meaning. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about migration. So there's a misconception that Africans are migrating outside Africa, but in reality, 53% of total migration is within Africa. So most migrants are actually coming from the west, east, central, and west, east, and central parts of Africa. And in addition, these regions bear the most number of individuals with scarification and tribal marks. So if you look at this image, you can see the orange, that's the one that's within Africa. And I'm mainly highlighting the southern route. And this is because it mainly connects the eastern part of Africa towards the southern region, transmitting through Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. And this is overall an attractive option, especially into South Africa as a final migrant destination. So what is the scarification impact on deceased migrants? Well, there has been an increase in migrants arriving at mortuaries, and they're often labeled unknown because of the lack of their identification. So through scarification, we hope to show how these markings can at least define origin and how they can link the deceased individuals to their families. In conclusion, scarification and cultural markings have the cogency of symbolizing identity for both ante-mortem and post-mortem. So while most identification processes, as you heard, rely on primary data, which is your fingerprints, your odontology, and your DNA profiling, reconciliation is dependent on the availability of both the post-mortem and the ante-mortem. So with scarification being such a strong cultural marker, when present, this could potentially be used as part of the PM data and at least determine the source of the geographical location, i.e. someone is from Nigeria or they're from Ghana. Also, a wealth of knowledge exists locally that has not been fully shared and utilized globally. And this research aims to not only increase awareness of scarification as a marker of identity, but to increase accessibility and preserve the knowledge within our own continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for respecting time. So now we are going for QA questions. We can have 1 or 2 questions, then we'll conclude the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tumi-san. That was a beautiful one. And mine is more like a comment than a question, because if you look at the Yoruba tribe, for example, they're spread from part of Nigeria to Benin Republic and across some parts of West Africa. So yes, it could be a marker to situate somebody within a certain geographic zone, but it's a little bit fluid when you come in real practice because of the movement of people and how people live in West Africa. So just one comment that I need to let you know. And within even the Yoruba people, there are different patterns. So what you've shown now may just be a certain group of Yoruba people. But when you move from the Ileshas to the Ekitis, to the Bas, there are different subgroups. So the app also needs to come to the subgroups Otherwise, you're going to get an impression that you're looking at Yoruba, but there's a variety that spreads all the way from the western states to the Midwest, which is about the Kogi axis and Benue axis. And scarification mark has even moved beyond the Yorubas. I know that is very prominent among them, but other tribes, if you go to the Hausas, to the Kanuris, and some part of Hausa Fulanese, scarification mark is also very prevalent. I think in the context in which you presented it, it would be a very potent tool. However, you know that the soft tissue is usually the first victim of post-mortem changes. And so we hope that in such circumstances, we can grab them on time. We have the access to the body on time to be able to do that. Otherwise, sometimes what you have is decomposed body, and then it will be very difficult to work with. But this is super, and I'm very happy that you took into cognizance Africa, and especially the Yorubas. Thank you, Tomi-san.
Thank you so much. Last question. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Lee, Usman Lee. I'm a pathologist by background. I'm from the Gambia. Currently, I'm stationed at the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine. So my question goes to Professor Emilio. It's a short one. I know you are tired. It relates to the craniofacial superimposition. You've made mention that it's a good or a quick way for forensic identification, even though you've made it clear that it is not the gold standard. So I am interested in the validation for computer-aided craniofacial superimposition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this question. The validation is depends on the cases and on the documents, evidence, and other aspects that you collect. When we perform human identification case, possible identifying data. That's why we perform post-mortem dental data, fingerprints, DNA, even if most probably we don't have any fingerprints database or we don't have any DNA database. So the issue is not putting the weight on which is better and what is more validated. I think you have to perform all means you have in order to achieve a human identification. If you don't have any primary identifiers, but you have portrait pictures, what would you do? You are left with the chance of doing this technique of superimposition, skull and portrait pictures. That's why I would not do this kind of consideration, because I don't like the idea of describing a method which is better rather than another method, because there is no method which is better than another one. It depends on the data you have available, also from the post-mortem side. I think that this superimposition is, this technique that I presented is one of the way you can easily have access to a, let's say, method, reliable method, even if you don't have a morgue, even if you don't have forensic odontologist, even if you don't have experienced pathologist. So you can start having a tool which is based on a TC scan, a portrait picture, and a software. So very easy to set up, for example. That depends also on the resources available. You see, resources means, do you have any X-rays? Do you have any portable X-rays? Do you have a morgue where you can do a TC scan, a whole body TC scan? Do you have odontologists? Do you have pathologists? Do you have computer, laptops, etc., etc.? So depends on so many variables, human resources and technical resources. This is, let's say, easy because the software is run on cloud. So once you have the access to this software, for example, you simply need a laptop. And then you need, of course, the scanning or the TC scan of the skull and the portrait picture. This is the point. I don't know if I answered to your question. I hope I did.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we thank you for that day.
Sorry, just the last one, Mr. President. Just as a follow-up to what he just asked to Professor Emilio, I was just wondering if, okay, for most of the disaster situations that I've attended to, probably only one or two get completely unidentified, but through the presence of DNA, use of DNA, and other secondary identifiers, then most are usually identified, however many they are. I was just wondering, even for theoretical purposes, now considering primary identifiers and secondary identifiers, and probably, I don't know if it's tertiary or hybrid, for example, the craniofacial superposition and scarification, and maybe other circumstantial evidences, use of cell phone, if we could get something like a DVI, kind of a protocol that can close that gap to zero, if there's something even theoretical. Thanks.
But you have DVI procedures, you have DVI protocols. You have also to consider the status of the human remains. I was involved in migrant death in 2017. There were 27 Nigerian girls and women. They arrived in the south of Italy, and they were collected soon after they drowned in the sea. So they were totally well preserved. You could see the face of these women as if they were just sleeping. And some of the identification was performed because they created a sort of album with the pictures that were shown by the other 380 people that were on that boat. So to answer to your question, there is no standards. I mean, my mentors have always told me that any DVI is different to each time is different. You have a DVI with fragmented human remains, like the Ethiopian 302, where dental was used no more than for 2,000, let's say, pieces, but there were more than 7,000 pieces that were identified via DNA. There are situations where you are carbonized, situations where you most probably don't get any fingerprints. So, and you have situations where you have well-preserved bodies, and in that situations you also use Interpol yellow alert because you don't know where the nationality is. I mean, in Europe, we have people, in Europe, in the world, we have people crossing one place to another place, and if we find somebody unidentified, unless you find some details like a watch or an earring, etc., you cannot you cannot state the nationality. That's why if you want to be sure to apply best standards, first reference is the Interpol DVI guide forms, which are downloadable on the Interpol website. Then the secondary identifiers. This is something everyone can work on, because if it is difficult to start applying best standards using Interpol standards, let's say, it is easy to start collecting secondary identifiers. And this means that we need to spread, I mean, we are all experts of different disciplines. We should start highlighting the need to the families that it's not only VIPs that are killed by terroristic attack. There are people who are going to the market, to school, or unfortunately, people who drown in the sea crossing the border. The issue is to raise a culture on the need to share identifying features. We are lucky today because we have Instagram, we have Facebook, so we find so many pictures of people. So from the dental point of view, I am happy, let's say. But there are other issues. But the face and the portrait is one of the starting point.
A small announcement from the president of ASFM.
Thank you so much.
Before we dismiss. Thank you so much.
Please, a round of applause for all the presenters for today. It's been a very stimulating discussion. And you'll be happy to know that we had about 400 people attending this event for today. In fact, over above, we're going to be getting the exact figure on top of 400. And this is unprecedented. And I want to thank once again the organizers. Once you survive day one, the rest of the conference is going to be okay. So now we survive day one. Please, a round of applause to the LOC and to all the organizers. So please, tomorrow is going to be business-like. It's going to be really, really strict. And this program is going to be starting 8 on the dot, and there will not be a second delay for people. It's going to just run like that. So you can plan your time. The whole idea is that we don't just want to come and sit down in this place all day, throughout 5 days. We want to be able to go out there, explore the city, understand the culture, mix up with people, sample some food and things like that, listen to some good music. So please, it is very important that all of us should be part of it. I mean, please, let's join him. He has something he's clapping for, but make sure you don't get drunk. I heard that Rwanda has very good beer, nice, freshly brewed beer that you can get, and some wine. And those who love coffee, there is this, they call it Gorilla Coffee. It's very, very beautiful. I tested it yesterday. So please, tomorrow, 8 a.m. on the dot, we're going to start. And so we thank you once again for coming, and we hope to see all of you seated here before 8 a.m. And we cannot forget all the people at the console who have assisted us today. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Fantastic guys at the console. You're great. You're great. You're the best. And to all the translators, please, thank you so much for the job you've done. I listened to your translation. That was fantastic. So once again, thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Good night. Au revoir.